So I saw this article floating around Twitter today, and it caused a lot of debate amongst Heat fans. And shocker, right? I know, because we know that Heat fans can't agree on anything except for maybe the fact that we hate Drew Smith, which even that's not true. Because believe it or not, I get a decent amount of comments telling me to lay off Drew Smith, and people think he's a very good player, which I just don't get. But anyways, I wanted to come on here and react to this article because one, I think it's an interesting topic, and two, the video I posted earlier today was like a film breakdown of Bam Adebayo in the Olympics, and it's performing very bad. And I'm trying to get that bread, so I figure let's come with a second video today. I'm kidding, not really at all. No, I'm half kidding. But anyways, this article is from Bleacher Report. It is called 5 NBA Offseason Moves That Will Look Terrible in 3 Years, written by our guy, Greg Schwartz. We've reacted to his articles before. He's not as good as my guy, Andy Bailey. Y'all know I prefer his writing, but I'll give Greg another shot here. We'll see what he's about. I see got DeMar DeRozan on the cover over here. So the first one is about Jimmy Butler, and it says the Miami Heat will regret not trading Jimmy Butler. He wrote a little bit about here, but trust me, I'm sure I get what he's saying. I see it here, a lot of money being paid to a guy who's in his mid-30s. And yes, obviously, there's a big faction of Heat fans out there that think the Heat should move down from Jimmy Butler. A lot of people say they should have did it a couple years ago because that's really when his trade value was the highest. I say probably after 2 seasons ago, obviously after they made the finals run, that's probably when you could have got the most value for Jimmy. Maybe you could have got 4 first-round picks and some nice young talent. Right now, I think if you traded Jimmy, maybe you could get 3 first-round picks and like a Jonathan Kuminga. That's kind of a package that we heard, which is okay value. That's not bad value. My personal opinion is I wouldn't trade Jimmy Butler. I think he is the definition of a superstar. Those don't fall off of trees. And although right now it looks like you won't be able to win a championship, I don't want to take for granted what Jimmy Butler is, because at the end of the day, you win championships with guys like Jimmy Butler. Not always, but you can't win one without a guy like Jimmy. So if you were to let go of Jimmy, who knows the next time that you could ever get someone of his caliber. Now, there's a lot of other things that I disagree with the front office for doing or not doing. Signing Thomas Bryant, for example, when we see guys like Gary Trent Jr. just get signed to a minimum. The Heat could have used him instead of Alec Burks. Now we don't even got a roster spot for Keyshawn Johnson, but that's a whole nother tangent for a completely different video. But anyways, I personally would not trade Jimmy Butler. That being said, I definitely get the logic, because if I'm sitting here as a Heat fan right now, and I just told you, I don't think the Heat can win a championship with this current core, with this build. If you ask me, do I think they could win one next year? Do I see an avenue in which they could acquire the right talent to win one next season? My answer would still be no. And at that point, Jimmy Butler's 35, 36. If he does re-sign an extension, he's going to be making a boatload of money, close to $60 million, over 30% of the salary cap. And why would I want to pay that much money to a player at that age if you can't win a championship? So I get the logic, because me saying that and agreeing with that is also me being hypocritical of saying I wouldn't trade Jimmy Butler. And that's what I like to call the duality of a Heat fan. Now, I don't like to think that I'm just doing it out of my heart, right? Because y'all see I got the signed Jimmy Butler jersey in the back here. It's not like I wouldn't trade Jimmy because I love him as a player, which is true. He's definitely my favorite player in the league. But I would like to still hold out hope for the chance that you could maybe get that last piece around him. Because theoretically, I wouldn't say it's a 0% chance you can't win a championship in the Jimmy Butler build. Who's to say that Jaime Jaquez doesn't take a huge jump next season? Nikola Jovic doesn't take a huge jump. Both those guys are all-star caliber players. Well, now all of a sudden, you got a roster that can compete. Who's to say Khalil Ware doesn't come out the gate and maybe not dominate, but have the kind of impact that a Derek Lively had last year? That's another incredible piece. Who's to say that the Phoenix Suns don't have another miserable season? Kevin Durant demands another trade, and then finally, the Miami Heat are able to get Durant, because third time's the charm. Third time trying to get him, maybe they finally land him. And now you would have a big three next season of KD, Jimmy, and Bam. Now, the same Heat fans that would want to trade Jimmy would say, why the hell would I hold out hope for Kevin Durant when we don't have the assets to get him? That's why we didn't get Kevin Durant last year. What the hell would make me think we'd get him next time? Well, I don't think we'd get Kevin Durant, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's a 0% chance, because we're seeing teams like the 76ers. Well, Now they logged into their, all their cap space with Paul George. The Knicks, they already gave a bunch of assets for OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. I know they still have more assets, but their asset pool is starting to dwindle down. We know the Boston Celtics, they got all their money tied up into Derek White's extension and Tatum and Brown and Porzingis. So eventually other teams' assets are going to start to depreciate, while the Miami Heat have some assets that could appreciate, grow. Maybe, like I said, if Jaime Jaquez does become a borderline all-star, well, now maybe all of a sudden the Phoenix Suns are interested in sending Kevin Durant over here. And I do think if you were able to get a player of his caliber, maybe even a guy like Lauri Markkanen, we know his name is kind of still out there. I do think there is avenues in which the Heat could win a championship in Jimmy Butler's build, although it's not likely. But that's a percentage chance that I'm willing to take, because I believe that if you don't have Jimmy Butler on this roster, you have a 0% chance of winning a championship within the next couple years. And winning a championship in the next X amount of years, because you don't know the next time you're going to get a superstar. Before Jimmy Butler, the last time the Heat had a superstar was LeBron and D Wade. And if you want to count Chris Bosh before he got hurt. Now, obviously, I know D Wade was still here, but he was a bench player in his final years here. He wasn't a superstar level player. So you really went basically a decade in between having a superstar. You got Jimmy Butler now. I would rather do whatever it takes to go all in around him and try to win a championship. Because as a Heat fan, what I would like to see the front office do is pick a direction. Because right now, I feel like they're half-assing it. They're trying to keep Jovic and Jaime and build around Khalil Ware, Keyshawn Johnson, Paolo Larson. Oh, yeah, I love these guys. They're great. I do love them. But you also can't keep Jimmy Butler if that's the case. I honestly believe that. You either got to trade all the young kids or you got to trade Jimmy. Now, I'm in the camp of trade the kids. So that's not to say if you want to trade Jimmy, you're wrong. That's what this whole rant here was about. Me yapping here was just telling you that I do understand if you're part of that faction of Heat fans that wants to trade Jimmy Butler. I get it. And that's what Greg Schwartz is paying here as well. Because if the Heat do decide to extend Jimmy, in this next offseason coming up, and they also decide to keep all the young kids, well, then that's just worst case scenario. That's pointless because you're trying to half-ass a rebuild. They're not picking a direction, and I think that is worst case scenario. Anyways, we'll move on a little bit here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the Jimmy Butler situation. But let's kind of talk real quick about what else Greg Schwartz has going on here. He says the Kings will regret giving DeMar $74 million. Obviously, that's a lot of money over the next 3 years for a guy who's turning 35 next season. As a Heat fan, we know the Heat were interested. I was interested because I do like DeMar DeRozan. I think you bring the talent in and let Spoelstra figure out how to make it all mesh. The Heat were trying to get DeMar on a minimum. I knew he would never take that. He clearly wanted something in the $25 million range, which is what he ended up getting. And to be honest, that 3-year 74, I don't think I would have liked that. Let's say the Heat were able to trade Tyler and Duncan and get the cap space to do something like the Kings did. I don't think I would have liked it. I would have taken DeMar on a 1-year bloated, sort of contract build, but I wouldn't want to commit money to a guy at his age for another 3 seasons. When you already got Jimmy Butler, you're going to have to do that too. Because if things go south, well, now you're paying 2 guys past 35 a boatload of money, and that's not something I would have wanted to do. Now, from the Kings standpoint, I get why they would kind of want to do that now, or maybe in general, because Sacramento's certainly not a free agent destination. So sometimes you got to overpay for a guy or give him more years than other teams are willing to in order to get a guy into your organization. I guess down here, this guy doesn't think it makes sense because they already have a Malik Monk. They have a Devin Carter, Keegan Murray, some other guys that could score. He does mention that he wishes they could have brought in some more defensive-minded talent. But if you're the Sacramento Kings, I think you could use scoring also. I think you could use someone, or not even say you use scoring. Obviously, I don't think they're a bad scoring team. They're very fast-paced, and I get all that. But I think the fit is still good, because it's clear-cut. You have your point guard, you have your starting backcourt with DeMar pair, and then you got Domantas Sabonis at the 5. You got Keegan Murray at the 4. I think it's all very defined here. And just thinking about how lethal that late-game offense is going to be, that's going to be scary for opponents. It really is. You got 2 of the clutchest players in the NBA in Fox and DeMar. I think this team is going to win, a lot of close games. And when you're in the playoffs, almost all the games are close. for that reason alone, I think this is a really, really nice pickup for them. You got some spacing concerns with DeMar and Sabonis. I get it, but Fox was very improved from 3 last year. It was like 38% on 8 attempts, something crazy like that. So overall, this just makes their offense that much more lethal, and you are bringing in a more veteran guy to a team that is primarily young. I think that helps a lot. Now, DeMar isn't super experienced. What did he go to 1 conference finals with Toronto? He obviously hasn't won a lot in the playoffs, and he's sort of been a bit of a playoff choker too. So he's not exactly like the experienced championship vet that I would like that young Kings team to get. But I think he'll be very nice for the Kings at least next season. But again, the article was called something they may regret 3 years from now. So let's say the Kings win a championship next year. They won't give a darn about paying DeMar for the next 2 seasons. So time will tell if this is a terrible move. I guess I should say for Jimmy as well. Just because the Heat didn't trade Jimmy Butler yet doesn't mean they won't or they can't. Now, I will say Jimmy came out publicly and said he won't sign an extension with anyone he's sent to. And obviously, as a guy that has a player option next year, he could decline. That kind of makes him act like an expiring free agent, so or an expiring deal. So teams are not going to give up a lot of assets with no guarantee that Jimmy is staying. But again, this is all, we're talking about moves they may regret in 3 years. So we don't know what's going to happen. They could trade him for tomorrow, for all I know. Moving on here, we have the San Antonio Spurs trading the 8th overall pick. I thought this is weird when the Spurs did it. Obviously, they took Stephon Castle at number 4, and then they took Rob Dillingham at 8, traded him to Minnesota, and they moved that pick 7 years down the line. It's a Spurs team that's trying to rebuild. Wouldn't you want to add in another nice young piece? I know they got Cody Williams here. I think I saw Buzelis, who's been balling out with the Bulls right now. Don't you think the Spurs could have used another nice young player? I don't get why they would do that. You obviously have a young core you're trying to build around now. Why not get a guy who's the same age as the rest of these guys instead of waiting 7 years when Wembanyama was already in his prime and you're trying to bring in a kid to add to that? It don't make sense to me. What I will say, though, is let's say 5 years from now, Wembanyama is already the MVP that we think he can be. Well, now the Spurs have an extra first-round pick down the line. They can trade for whatever disgruntled star is available. Who's to say Luka Doncic isn't disgruntled in 5 years, and now the Spurs got an extra first-round pick they can attach in an asset haul for Luka? That would be nuts, bro. Luka and Wemby, Jesus, why did I speak that into existence? So I get the logic here by Greg Schwartz, but it's nice that the Spurs just have another asset, down the line they could use for a trade, because it looks like Wembanyama will be very good very soon. What else we got here? We got the 4th one, LeBron committing to a lackluster Lakers franchise. Yes, the Lakers are certainly the team with the Miami Heat that had one of the most lackluster off seasons, to use the word he says here, which as a Heat fan, I want to sit here and laugh at the Lakers. Oh, they thought they'd get DeMar and Clay, and they didn't get no one. Well, we thought we were going to get DeMar and Donovan Mitchell, and we also didn't get no one. So I can't laugh at the Lakers here. But to be honest, at this point in his career, I mean, LeBron's got 4 rings. Do you think he's chilling? Do you think he likes being in LA where he has all this power and he could give Rich Paul, courtside seats to every game, and they could draft his son Bronny, and he can, make the next Space Jam 3 movie and be in LA? I just don't know what LeBron values at this point. There was a point as a Heat fan, I was really hoping, Pat Riley said the keys under the mats. I was hoping LeBron would come back. But then the Lakers hired LeBron's best friend, JJ Redick, podcast co-host, to be his head coach. So clearly LeBron has a ton of power with the Lakers. I think he likes that. That part of the reason he left Miami is because Pat Riley didn't want to succumb to every move that LeBron was asking for. So I think LeBron is chilling, even though the Lakers will probably continue to be a mid-team who will get destroyed whenever they face the Denver Nuggets or Timberwolves in the playoffs, or whatever other Western powerhouse they play. So I do think LeBron is chilling. Last one here. The 76ers giving a 4-year max deal to Paul George. I could not agree more. I think Paul George is the habitual playoff choker. He's very good in the regular season, but when the games matter most, he is nowhere to be found. I have a whole video kind of breaking down his playoff blunders. You can check it out a few videos back. Just search Paul George, Anthony DiNardo. But anyways, I'm not a fan of Paul George. You're pairing him now, and with Joel Embiid, another guy who comes up short in the playoffs and can't stay healthy. Sounds like a match made in hell. I'll be honest with you. Now, I love Tyrese Maxey, but there's only so much he can do. I don't think this fit will work. And obviously Paul George is a guy that's 34 also. He's getting, older in age. He already can't stay healthy. You usually don't get more healthy with age. So they're going to end up paying a lot of money to a guy who I think is ultimately going to continue to fall short. Now, I will say this too, though. I heard on his podcast, which he seems to care more about his podcast than, playing basketball now anyways, but I digress. He did say on his podcast that he was disrespected by the Clippers' initial offer, which was like $30 million a year. And I quote tweeted that video on Twitter, and I said, the audacity of Paul George to feel disrespected after being a perennial loser. What the hell has Paul George ever done when it mattered to think that he demands max money? To think that he demands Jaylen Brown money? Jaylen Brown is a finals MVP. Well, who the hell are you, Paul George? I don't like that from him. I really don't. Like, acting like you LeBron, acting like you Curry, you not. And if you watch that video from Paul George, he was genuinely disrespected. And then the Clippers ended up even upping their offer to like $50 million a year. But by that point, Paul George was already too disrespected. And it's like, have some sense, man. Read the room a little bit. Put a little bit perspective on your career, which is a perennial loser. I don't like that from Paul George. He's one of my least favorite players in the NBA. And the 76ers are one of my least favorite teams. So I will look forward to their ultimate demise and being in salary cap hell for paying a playoff bum 4 years, $212 million contract, because that's not going to work out well at all. Anyways, that's all I got to say for this video. Make sure to let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think these teams will agree with making these moves or not making these moves? Let me know down below. I will be reading everybody's thoughts. Make sure to like the video and subscribe because all the support is greatly, greatly appreciated. The Heat do have a summer league game tomorrow. I want to try to get like an Alanis Williams out too in a post game. So I'll see what I got time for, but subscribe so y'all don't miss it. And I'll see y'all then. So peace out.
Look, pull up in your city trying to get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.